DNA of superheroes takes place in major metropolitan cities, and so we knew all along we were going to do our version of Gotham, Empire City.
All of us had played through Grand Theft Auto, and we thought, well, this is a great game. I wish I could fly. I wish I were a superhero. You know, we're like, all right, great. Let's make the open world superhero game.
The open world aspect is great. You can play around in the sandbox and explore at your own pace and will, continue the story whenever you'd like, do side missions, look for collectibles, or just mess around. The city is the perfect size. It's small enough that you don't need to have loading times or fast travel, and it's big enough to be full of content and feel like a real city with different locations and districts. What helps with the size is how densely packed the city is. Many open world games have large areas on their map with nothing in them. This is not the case in Infamous. The city feels streamlined and it won't waste your time. A bit later in the game you get a power that allows you to travel faster by riding on power lines. They always seem to be perfectly placed for wherever you need to go. It seems like Sucker Punch placed them to fit with the paths the player takes in story missions, but they also are in good positions to get anywhere in the city. There is also a train you can ride on top of in each district that is activated in story or side missions. The trains are the fastest way to travel in the game and are a really nice option for speed, as well as they're just a ton of fun to ride on. But they are balanced by the fact that you have to wait for a train to be near you and jump on it while you can. There's a wide variety of tall and or interesting buildings to climb. Simply exploring the city and reaching its highest points and best views is a big part of the fun in having an open world.
Late in the night, the city's asleep.
Like I mentioned before, enemies are all over these rooftops. This makes them feel tall and intimidating. They can easily overwhelm you with their numbers because they are all over the rooftops. Cole is weak and vulnerable while free roaming. There are two types of collectibles in the game, blast shards and dead drops. Blast shards are pieces of debris that were scattered across the city and irradiated by the ray sphere blast. There are a ton of them and they can be found all over the place, but mostly on rooftops. Collecting them will increase Cole's maximum energy. And they're not tedious because you don't have to collect them all to reach the maximum amount of energy. Unless you're trying to get all of the trophies. Then you have to get them all and it is tedious. Blast shards are an option to make you more powerful that is not necessary to continue the game, but they are helpful for those who take their time and explore. That being said, you'll naturally run into a few even if you're not trying to, and when you see one nearby, you feel compelled to go grab it before continuing your main objective. Dead drops are audio logs left by John.
Released from the infirmary. Initial assignment is installing and configuring satellite dishes across Empire City. When I asked what they planned on doing with the dishes, I was told to mind my own business. Because the dishes are relatively isolated and secure, I use them for my dead drops.
You find them in satellite dishes and they provide you with no gameplay benefits, but more background info on the story. They're a lot more compelling than blast shards because there's fewer of them and Infamous has a very mysterious, fascinating story. It's nice to have the extra details to find while exploring that aren't essential to the story, but add a lot of intrigue.
We've hidden all kinds of little narrative pickups, which I'm sure people are never going to see. The casual player is never going to understand the depth of everything going on in Empire City. However, if you're a really dedicated player, if you're somebody that really wants to know every last bit of what's happening, it's there for you. You just have to decide that you want to explore this huge three-dimensional sculpture that is Empire City.
They also don't answer everything, which is good to keep the mystery alive. Dead drops are a good form of exposition. You are involved with gameplay and finding them, so they're not boring. God damn it! The game crashed and froze my PS3.
There's this enormous world of side missions and quests that you can do in Infamous, which is on the order of 3 times as many things as the primary path has.
Side missions are a weaker part of the game. They're repetitive and have mostly meaningless stories, but they do create a bond between the player and the people of Empire City, as well as give you a nice break from and make you stronger for the main story. They make the city feel more alive by you helping random people out with their hardships. These are the main types of side missions. Combat missions where you fight bad guys. Sure, there's not much to them, but they're fun because you get more of the game's great combat. Clones of story missions. These side missions simply take a gameplay concept from the main story missions and expand upon it. They're a little repetitive, of course, but they do take existing scenarios and add more challenge and variations. Missions where you make a karma choice, usually to be selfish to get more shards, or not get them. Why do people collect blast shards? Are they valuable or something? Like, do they sell them? They're irradiated, so they're giving them cancer. Missions where you rescue someone or a group of people. They're okay. Climbing missions where you have to find and deactivate security devices on buildings. These ones are pretty boring. Missions where you collect medical packages while fighting enemies to open clinics. Meh? Some of the mission types are very different and fun though. Missions where you do moves to pose for pictures.
Yeah, keep it up. Just need a few more pics.
Missions where you have to race past satellite uplinks. Completing these missions reveals the locations of other side missions on your map. Missions where you find a package containing blast shards. All you get is a picture and an area to search. In some of them you have to stealthily follow an enemy who's carrying a package, which is a nice callback to the Sly Cooper game Sucker Punch made before Infamous. Good and evil karma missions. If you do one, the opposite karma mission is blocked out.
Riding in a getaway car, there were sirens in the beat of your heart.
The good missions tend to be kinda boring as you just help the cops capture enemies, but the evil ones tend to be pretty creative and fun. Assassinate people, cause havoc, kill your haters, etc. Doing these missions will unlock a power exclusive to good or evil. Good karma gets you the Overload Burst, a bolt you have to charge that does extra damage and chains to surrounding enemies. It's a nice idea to have a good karma move that focuses on being patient, but the move really isn't that useful until it's fully upgraded by doing all the good karma missions. Evil karma missions get you Arc Lightning, which is extremely fun and useful. It's a constant stream of lightning that can hit many enemies at a time, but uses energy. When fully upgraded, it makes enemies explode when they die. This is fitting as an evil power because it's better than the good power, thus another test of selfishness or selflessness in gameplay. There's a few notable, unique side missions that are really fun. In one, you find a disguised Reaper conduit and kill it. One is a fight between the Dustmen and the First Sons at Ground Zero. This one is super fun and puts you up against 4 mini-boss conduits at once.
Show them the errors in their ways.
Why the fuck is this mission so hard? Doing side missions clears enemies from a section of the map, giving you an easier time while free roaming. You'll also gain medical clinics, which act as respawn points in free roam. As you take back the city, you'll feel like you're gaining power. You start out weak and slowly build up to being either a savior of the people or a dominating monster. It's also great that you can keep doing side missions after the story is over. In Infamous, you upgrade your powers with experience points you earn from combat and by completing missions. You can do special stunt moves in combat to earn more XP. The game encourages you to use your powers together in creative combos to upgrade them faster. This is a simple system that works because your abilities improve the more you play, and you have to choose which upgrades are a priority for your playstyle. This is the only aspect of gameplay that has no connection to the story, and that's okay. I don't think everything in a video game needs a story explanation if you can't find one that fits. Like I mentioned before, many of the powers have upgrades determined by your karmic state. This provides you with 2 different playstyles, precise and destructive. There's a nice gameplay difference for the 2 sides, but I think the upgrades should allow for a switch in karma. Once XP is spent, it's gone forever.
Until I switch to the other side, to the other side.
Good upgrades will become useless if you turn evil and vice versa. When good, you can upgrade your bolt to give you energy and health back, which is super useful because you can stay in the fight and have to drain less. When evil headshots, cleverly named headshocks, cause explosions, which is pretty awesome and still rewards precision but with a destructive result. Headshots are a one-hit kill on all enemies when fully upgraded. Upgraded with good karma, the shockwave will make enemies float in the air. This opens up enemies to be easier targets. When evil, you get electricity in your blast, which adds extra damage and can make cars explode. Other upgrades are free of karma. The Thunder Drop upgrades add range, force, and electrifies the explosion. Pretty basic things. There's an upgrade to reduce damage. It's a basic health upgrade, but is very useful. Melee upgrades increase damage. You can upgrade draining to be faster, drain from wires that you can use to travel faster later in the game. And when your karma meter fills up, you can activate a short period of The Gigawatt Blades are a power that was a pre-order bonus, but now have been made a free download on the PlayStation Store. Pre-order bonuses are stupid, but I'll save that for another video. This power uses energy to create electric blades around Cole's hands that kill in one hit. It's a useful addition to the moveset and is nice to have more depth to the simple melee. It's very strong but also uses a lot of energy, so it's not overpowered. I love how enemies will run away from you in fear when you ignite them. The upgrades for them slightly increase damage, but it doesn't make much of a difference until you get to the first suns. All of the regular enemies before that they will kill in one hit. The game can be played with or without the Gigawatt Blades. They're a nice addition, but ultimately don't change the game that much. Having an open world creates a realistic setting for the story and one that feels alive. You can wander around and explore, help random people with their hardships, fight bad guys, clear them out to make areas easier to go through, gain XP and blast shards to improve your powers, and search for dead drops to unravel the mysteries going on in Empire City. Starting out weak and gradually becoming very powerful and taking back all the territory in the city is an awesome feeling. The game runs at a mostly steady frame rate, usually 30 frames per second, although it can drop slightly in a few big fights. And in a few rare parts, such as Sasha's boss fight, the frame rate jumps up to 60 FPS. I would prefer a slightly more steady frame rate, but it's usually not even noticeable. Unfortunately, the game has a lot of glitches. Although not everyone I've talked to about the game has said it's as glitchy as it is for me. I seem to get mixed experiences on it. All I know is the version of the game I've played on a disc with the latest update installed is very glitchy. These glitches mostly don't break or ruin the game, but they take you out of the experience a bit and are annoying. One of the glitches is that if you shoot a drainable object with bolts that has already been drained, you can drain from it again. This is really cheap because it basically gives you unlimited energy. I wouldn't recommend using this cheat, but now you know. Remember when I made the incomplete part 1 of this video like 2 years ago? I showed a montage of some crazy glitches. By now you've realized that I've completely redone the video since then, so shall we do the montage again? Yes. Yes, we shall.
Hopefully we can help make a game as clean as possible, but really there are no bug-free games that come out anymore, so.
But we were dancing. I don't have enough pencil. Dancing with our hands tied. Yeah, we were dancing. Like it was the first time. Yeah, we were dancing.
This is America. Don't catch you slipping now. Don't catch you slipping now. Look what I'm whipping now. This is America.
Most of those glitches are actually pretty funny, so at least they give you a good laugh. When it comes to graphics, technologically, inFAMOUS is not very impressive even for its time. Models have rough edges, textures are low resolution, and there is no anti-aliasing. But that really doesn't matter as long as the graphics serve the story and gameplay. Once you've been playing the game for a few hours, you get used to the technological quality of the graphics and accept them as reality within that world. What matters in graphics is the artistic quality, not how many particles or lighting effects you have on screen. inFAMOUS has fantastic graphics and really excels with great visual design and beautiful art.
But what can I say? You're gorgeous.
You know, this is a business and it's also creating art, but I think the elusive quantity here, more than anything, is just making good, entertaining video games. That the game doesn't become just a tech demo and it doesn't become just beautiful looking but not fun to play. This elusive quality of fun is what we all are in pursuit of here, and we're really proud of what we've accomplished.
The environment is lush with many visual details that create and add to the feeling of Empire City, a fictional version of New York City that is heavily characterized to fit this story. It has a dense, urban, industrial, gritty style to it.
The architecture is clearly influenced by two big things. The first was a desire to have it feel like a grounded, largely Western city. That's where superhero stories exist. At the same time, we looked at cities, international cities that had really great opportunities for climbing and jungle gymming across. It's kind of a mishmash very intentionally of things to try and show age of a city and like it's been lived in.
There's giant hydraulic bridges, tall skyscrapers, elevated train tracks, a ton of apartment buildings, no houses in sight, compact streets and alleyways, water towers and satellite dishes everywhere, expansive sewers, an underwater tunnel, a giant prison, police stations, huge signs, small shops, a few parks, graffiti, many gas stations, a shipping yard, a power plant, and electric wires running between rooftops.
One of the reasons we decided to make Cole an electrically based superhero is that electricity is all around you when you're in the city. You see power lines everywhere, you see light poles, you see, junction boxes on the wall.
The city has a reliance on electricity which can be drained from all around you. Streetlights, transformers, cars, air conditioners, TVs, wires, and more. These objects stand out and are easy to spot when you need to drain. Buildings have many windowsills, pipes, ladders, fire escapes, and ledges along the side which are nice visual details, as well as handholds for Cole to grab while climbing. On top of this style, Empire City is also broken and decaying. A giant explosion has destroyed a large area of the city.
The game opens with this really awful, devastating explosion. It knocks down 6 square blocks of Empire City.
I don't think that's 6 square blocks, but whatever.
Real cities are dirty, they're grimy, they've got clutter, they've got garbage in every corner.
All the cars are smashed and dirty, streetlights are bent over, water is leaking out of pipes, trash is everywhere.
Windows boarded up after the storm. He built a fire just to keep me warm.
The skyline is full of jagged carcasses of skyscrapers, and a thick smog full of dust and smoke that has settled on the city. That distance fog is a limitation of the technology, but Sucker Punch used it well to fit in with the city. All these things showed the despair of the people living in the city. Their city is dirty, lived in, and falling apart. The color palette of the city changes with the time of day throughout the story.
I'll make all your gray days clear.
These changes in lighting are used to have thematic resonance between the story and graphics.
Whiskey on ice, sunset and vine.
A bright, beautiful sunset is used when Cole finally finds John in the Ray Sphere to symbolize his regained hope. Then Zeke betrays him and the world is plunged into darkness and fog as the story is pulled closer to Kessler and his mysteries. The lighting during the ending gives you an odd yet peaceful feeling. You're finally getting closure to your troubles, although nothing is turning out how Cole hoped it would. The lighting after the ending is determined by karma. On evil, it's the same smoky, destructive lighting the game started with, and on good, it's bright sunshine. Your actions determine the visuals you'll be stuck with after the story.
Hey Zach, why are you spending so much time talking about graphics? I thought you said before that they're not very important.
Well, I'm talking about the part of graphics that matters. Notice that I only spent a few seconds talking about the technological side of them. Health is shown with blood on the sides of the screen and everything turning black and white. Although this is a typical way to show health in games, it's a very good way to have no health bar and less HUD. All of the common enemy types wear masks or hoods that obscure their face. This is a creative way for Sucker Punch to spend less time on making enemy models that can believably all look the same. Reapers wear red and easily stand out against the environment. They're the first group of enemies you fight, so it's important when learning combat that you can tell which people are enemies and where they are. They have skulls on their hoods and cough up black tar in a way that's very creepy. The Dustmen are guerrilla fighters and wear green trash bags and outfits scrapped together out of junk. They're a little harder to make out from the environment, but still very noticeable. The game is just holding your hand less as it goes on. The First Sons, although they still pop out from the environment due to glowing blue eyes, blend in even more with brown and gray colors, and some are even invisible. This fits with them being a mysterious group that blends into society. They're scientifically advanced, but are also old-fashioned in ideals and origin. This is perfectly portrayed by how they dress and the look of their technology. They wear sci-fi gas masks and tanks on top of old-fashioned suits and lab coats. They're militaristic scientists, and their technology looks futuristic, but also like it's from the 40s or 50s, because it is. Each character is visually designed to show off their characteristics.
When you met me, your buzz cut and
Cole stands out as a unique character model while also not seeming all that special. He wears padded athletic clothing for bicycling and climbing, as well as a sling backpack because he's a messenger. His clothing is practical for what he does. He doesn't wear a shiny supersuit, a cape,
No capes!
or tights. Zeke dresses sorta in a 50s greaser style with his leather jacket, collared shirt, slicked back hair, and sunglasses, but he's also dressed for combat with an ammo sling and knee pads. Trish wears a pack with medical supplies and latex gloves. She's a doctor. Duh. Moya wears a formal pantsuit because she's in the FBI. Duh. It's also implied that she may be using her formality as a disguise for her true motives. Sasha dresses seductively but also looks inhuman because of how her power got to her head. Alden looks very weak physically. He wears a leg brace, is blind in one eye, and walks with a cane. His head has been stitched back together from a major wound, implying a traumatic past but a strong will to keep himself together. His face is wrinkled and contorted not only from age but from his difficult life. Pedestrians wear dirty clothing, mostly consisting of jackets. John dresses as if he's just a random person in Empire City because he's undercover. Duh! Kessler's long hooded cloak-like trench coat and robotic parts make him a very mysterious figure. Even though he has the same face as Cole, I like that it's not very noticeable until the big reveal that they are the same person. The hood, scarf, and wrinkles make it hard to tell even though the answer is right under your nose the entire time. This is a superhero game, so of course a huge part of the graphics are the superpowers themselves.
It wasn't like this singular moment where we said, hey, it's electricity. It was among a series of powers that we were exploring. It had one hugely defining attribute, which is that it was beautiful.
Cole's electricity looks absolutely gorgeous, whether it's blue, red, or black. The lightning is vibrant and flashy. His powers light up and stand out against the gray, desaturated colors of this dirty, destroyed city. The lighting they provide looks amazing in the dark sewers, and Cole stepping in puddles which conduct his electricity is a great little detail. Each move looks unique and some are exceptionally cool looking. The lightning storm is the most beautiful of them all. The sky and surrounding environment go dark from thunderclouds as the bright lightning pours down from the sky, illuminating a gloriously destructive path.
We've modeled all the metal in the world to conduct electricity, to jump between objects, and zap people, zap enemies.
The powers are also beautifully animated. The electricity flows in jagged formations from objects and onto Cole's arms. It hits quickly with force and makes enemies squirm in pain as their nerves are fried. All of the combat animations look realistic and flow well, especially Cole's animations for each of his moves as well as running and climbing. Cole zips along wires as if they were a skate park pipe, glides majestically through the air, and moves around like a self-trained acrobat. He also has idle animations that are triggered by standing still for a few seconds. Cole will fidget with the electricity in his hands a bit, which is a really nice detail. I also like how the Reapers will randomly cough up tar while fighting you. It's always easy to tell what's going on during gameplay, where Cole is going to grab, what move he's using, and what moves the enemies are about to do. That's a majority of the animation you'll see in the game. The only bad animation is that of the in-engine cutscenes. These animations feel choppy, lifeless, and unfinished, and the facial animations are straight up scary. Thankfully, a majority of the most important cutscenes are pre-rendered comic cutscenes. These cutscenes are my favorite aspect of the graphics in this game.
The cutscenes really were an attempt to tell stories that feel genuine in a graphic novel sense.
They are beautifully hand-drawn and animated to look like moving pages of a comic book.
In a graphic novel sense.
I mean graphic novel. Infamous is inspired by graphic novels, and this is a really nice way to bring that full circle. They're absolutely gorgeous and creative with their use of visuals to tell the story while Cole narrates it. These cutscenes are a solution to the messy animation used in in-engine cutscenes, and saves the game's presentation of its story while also providing it with an amazing hand-drawn, splatter-filled, gritty style that brings out Cole's thoughts and emotions. Visuals are only half of the presentation.
All my powers, and I couldn't do a thing.
Let's talk about the audio in Infamous. I'm gonna turn the lights off for a moment so we can just focus on sound.
Hey.
What did you just hear? Could you picture what was happening? Let's see how close you were.
Hey.
sound design is really great at depicting what is happening and simply sounding appealing. A lot of the sound quality speaks for itself, so I'm going to be playing a lot of examples here. All the powers don't just look different, they sound different. They all sound zappy, thunderous, buzzing, and like they're ripping through the air. The enemies sound menacing, with roaring coughs and racketing bullets. Sound is used to give you cues for when an enemy is about to attack, especially when the enemy is hard to see coming. You can tell when suicide bombers are close based on their screams that get louder as they approach you. The First Son's hologram conduit makes loud noises when it walks. A hissing is heard before a grenade blows up. The mines in the historic district will beep and be louder the closer you are. Spiders make rattling noises as they walk. Etc., etc., etc. The voice acting is great too. All the voices are perfect for their characters. Cole sounds troubled and conflicted.
You know, I really wish this had never happened to me. I'm nothing but a damned errand boy, same as before. Going where people tell me, when they tell me. I'm starting to think that's never gonna change.
Zeke sounds enthusiastic and immature.
You know how you use that blast move to throw a guy into the air and then shoot him while he's floating around? We need to name those kinds of moves, man.
Trish sounds concerned and irritated.
That's the only time I'm helping you, Cole. If you get that stuff on you again, you're just gonna have to wait for it to wear off.
Moya sounds commanding and confident.
Given the state of our new partnership, I've taken the liberty of cloning your phone's frequency. I've got a lock on your GPS locator, and I can hear every word you say.
Sasha sounds sexy and insane.
They're expecting us at 7. Of course, it's formal. I like your tuxedo. And I made soup from those bones. You want a taste?
Alden sounds angry and deranged.
You dare mention my father! I'll kill you! All of you! Tear you from limb to limb!
John sounds stern and inquisitive.
So, what's your plan for getting out of the city?
Hell if I know.
Well, you better come up with something. If you think they're gonna let someone as powerful as you just run around, you better think again.
And Kessler sounds menacing and intelligent.
But in times of war, crisis, one must learn to ignore their feelings and do what benefits the whole, not the individual.
Fun fact, although Cole and Kessler are the same person, they have different voice actors. But Jason Cottle, who voices Cole, also voices Alden. Most of the dialogue is said over phone calls while Cole is busy and on the move. I really like this because you can keep playing as the story unfolds and you don't feel like the game slows down or gets boring as a result of it.
You're the reason we have a death penalty!
Hey, hero! Yeah, you! Thieves are everywhere!
Let's kill this liar!
While not all pedestrian voice acting is that good, I love how people will just tell you about their horrible situation, ask for help, mock you, or cheer for you as you pass by.
Who made you the king?
Cole's pants are really loud. It's a good sound, but maybe a bit too loud for something that you hear constantly. When Cole grabs a ledge or scales a pipe, it sounds really satisfying for some reason. It works because you just successfully gained elevation, and it feels good. Cars honk in the distance, their engines sound gritty and loud. The train passes by every so often, screeching along the tracks. You can hear the wind throughout the city, and it gets louder the higher you climb into the sky. Guns are often being fired at you, cops, or random people. If a payphone is hit by a bullet, it will briefly ring, and if hit by electricity, it will go crazy with ringing. All of these sounds add a lot of feeling to the world. They're pretty good, but alone can sound kinda flat. What elevates the environmental sound design is the incredible soundtrack. inFAMOUS has one of the most unique and creative scores I've ever heard. The main types of instruments used are percussion, strings, synths, and non-instruments. What are these non-instruments?
Do instruments of torture count? No.
Is mayonnaise an instrument?
No, Patrick, mayonnaise is not an instrument.
Things that usually would not be used as or considered to be instruments. The composers and sound designers literally went to a junkyard and started banging things like drums and breaking them to produce sounds for their music. Things that sound like they'd be in an urban environment.
You want it to be orchestral, but you don't want it to be John Williams.
So I play him like a violin, and I make it look oh so easy.
Not only that, but many real instruments were played incorrectly to design the strange feel of the music. This is a really unorthodox way to make music, but it's perfect for the game. This creates a soundtrack that blends into the sound design perfectly and adds some audible texture to the world. It really feels like this music is the spirit of Empire City, just oozing out with emotion. It's breathing, screaming, crying, and being ripped apart. Many tracks mix feelings of mystery, danger, violence, sadness, defeat, and victory. Some tracks are very intense and have fast beats for intense moments, and others are very slow, echoey, and ambient for the moments where you can just wander the city and ponder what's going on. And the end credits song Silent Melody by Working for a Nuclear-Free City fits into this musical style while having lyrics that are about the themes of the game. This soundtrack is beautiful and fits with its story more than most. The audio and visuals create the destroyed urban atmosphere of Empire City and immerse you in it. Immersion is a word that's often thrown around in game criticism just to sound cool, without any thought into what it actually means. It's usually used when describing how technologically advanced or realistic the graphics are. The definition of immersion is a state of being deeply engaged or involved. Now, realistic graphics can help with immersion because the game looks more real, of course, but if you want to seriously critique immersion, you have to look at how the game makes a player feel engaged and involved in the game, which inFAMOUS does a pretty damn good job of, although it has some flaws as well.
So I don't really think that better graphics or better lighting or better scripts or setups are going to get people more dialed into the narrative. I mean, I hope so, but what I really hope is that people get more dialed into the visceral experience of being that character.
Let's talk about what inFAMOUS does to make you more immersed in it. At the start of the game, you are told to use the left stick to look up, but you are not told which direction to push the stick in. You can push it up or down, whichever feels natural to you. The game will use this information to automatically choose whether or not you want your camera controls inverted. This is absolutely genius and something I've never seen another game do. It prevents you from having to go into a menu to change it, thus the opening is seamless. In a similar fashion, the game chooses the best difficulty setting for you based on how well you fight in the first mission, and then adjusts it based on the second. You can change it if you want, but you shouldn't if you want an experience at the best challenge level for you. Cole takes no fall damage, has infinite stamina, does not become physically weak after being shot over and over, and completely heals in a matter of seconds. All of these things are pretty typical for video games, depending on which one you play. In most games, they don't make any sense with the story, but in inFAMOUS, it's all explained by Cole being a conduit, meaning a person with superpowers. Other things are also explained this way. Why doesn't Cole drive cars?
Yeah, not unless some genius invents a car that doesn't explode when I sit in it.
Why doesn't Cole shoot guns?
The second you touch it, the electricity in your hands cooks off the gun.
Because that wouldn't be fun in a superhero game.
Damn it, stop doing that! I can't hang the phone up, How does Sucker Punch create map borders that don't break immersion?
Jump into the pool from the balcony.
The game takes place on islands and water kills Cole. Brilliant! There is no loading except for when you start the game or the time of day changes, and when there is loading, it's very fast. There's also no fast travel. You have to spend time to go from one location to another in the city, and it's not annoying because the open world can be traversed quickly. While free-roaming television broadcasts will randomly play, and some pedestrians will randomly stop to try to fight you or ask for help.
A mugger stole all my food.
but sometimes it's a bit hard to figure out exactly what they're trying to point at. A few things like this can break immersion. People walk around, but if you follow them, you'll realize they aren't going anywhere or doing anything. Same thing for cars. They drive around, but never park, and no one ever gets in or out of them. And the trains never stop. You really feel bad for the people of Empire City who have to live their lives inside of a non-stop speeding train. Destroying cars, even when someone is in one, is not considered evil according to karma, but killing people who aren't in cars is. This was likely done so you wouldn't accidentally hit cars and get evil karma while playing good, but it does break immersion. Immersion enhances the believability of a world.
We are asking a critical thing of our players and our viewers, which is to believe that someone could get electrically superpowered. And that's kind of the gateway to the whole game.
Obviously, Infamous is fiction. Superpowers aren't real, but everything besides the superpowers in Infamous is believable in the real world. And the only unbelievable element is introduced immediately in the story. It helps you care more about what happens in the story since you believe that it could actually happen given a world with superpowers. The people of Empire City are in a terrible situation caused by a terrorist. It's essentially a post-apocalyptic setting. Food, medicine, and clean water are hard to come by, and there's a lot of violence, sickness, and death. The government appears to not give a shit about them. They just lock them in the madhouse of a city to keep what's inside from spreading and make very few attempts to help. Gangs overthrow the police in the chaos, and their world is turned upside down. People are just people. There are no rules for them. They choose to either band together or tear each other apart.
Infamous is really inspired by some personal experience. I was involved in the WTO riots in Seattle, and it was really cool because during the riots there were no police, they'd all been kind of pushed off, and I was seeing people like kicking in windows to stores, and it's like a totally lawless area, and yet at the same time people were offering me food or water to wash tear gas out of my eyes. There were no repercussions. Somebody could have just beat me up, but they didn't, because human beings really aren't mean, It was great. It was like core humanity because society was sort of reformed. And that's something we tried to do in the game by making it a lawless city where taking care of people was more of a choice. It wasn't something you felt like compelled to do. And that's where it came from. So we're just trying to be kind of real in what's going on in the game.
The government has a character of royalty who doesn't care for peasants. Just give them a bit of food. They help a tiny bit, but that's all. Unfortunately, this is realistic and believable. The US government tends to take forever bickering over what to do and not take enough action. Hurricane Katrina is an example of this, and most likely one of the inspirations for Infamous's story.
Katrina exposed serious problems in our response capability at all levels of government. And to the extent that the federal government didn't fully do its job right, I take responsibility.
In the game, the government is also brutal to the people. When they try to escape the city, they just gun them all down. The power of the government is illustrated in gameplay by you having to take cover and flank them rather than take them head on. If all that wasn't enough to make the government in the game dystopian and evil, they also lie about how much help they're actually providing to Empire City, and the news is pure propaganda.
Electricity was restored to large sections of Empire City today as the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers worked around the clock, repairing damaged transformers and substations. Officials tell U.S. TV that relief efforts will continue around the clock for the foreseeable future. Some observers are already comparing the scale of this operation to the Berlin airlift, which saved that city from communist aggression. Hope is on the way, Empire City.
The government and media aren't the only source of
fake, disgusting news.
A TV jacker who goes by Voice of Survival makes his own broadcasts within Empire City and shows empathy towards his fellow people in the city, while also telling lies and exploiting their misfortune to obtain power and influence over them.
I finally learned the identity of the terrorist. That's right, I know the name of the man who destroyed our city and sentenced us to life in this hell. This is Cole McGrath, terrorist, light bulb man, grade A certified douchebag. If you see him running around, do whatever it takes to bring him down. It's time for his reign of terror to end.
This is a really great minor character that adds depth to the people of Empire City and their relationship to their government. Broadcasts from the TV jacker or the news will randomly come on as you pass televisions in the game, which is a really cool dynamic aspect to the world. Eventually, the TV jacker is found and killed by the military during a broadcast.
Stay away from what you said, I told him! Stay away from what you said, I told him!
His storyline is a nice detail that can be completely missed if you don't stop to smell the flowers.
Now, one of my boys thinks she's working with DARPA. You have boys? Like, I'm being serious here, man. You gotta pay attention.
Zeke is a conspiracy theorist, and it seems that he is one simply because it's cool, but he's actually mostly right. And Zeke's ego is heightened by that. It's a nice twist of expectations, and it makes sense that Cole wouldn't believe him or take him seriously, so he keeps going along with Moya. Of course, because of all the violence, corruption, mistrust, hopelessness, loss, betrayal, and death, Infamous has a very dark and serious tone.
We wanted the city to feel like there was despair around. So if you see people walking down the street, they don't look very happy because they aren't. And it really gives the city a feeling of life.
This world is full of meaningful consequences where any of the major characters could be killed off, turn on Cole, or turn out to actually be on his side. It's unpredictable, and because the consequences are so great, everything has a lot of weight and really matters. You care a lot about what could happen to Cole. That being said, if everything was dark and drab, then it can create a world that's too serious, lifeless, and boring. Infamous also has its fair share of comic relief and hopeful moments.
Hard to make out. Looked like a man and a dog or something.
Dwight was killed by a dog? Damn. I had a cousin that went the same way. Whew. I shouldn't have had an open casket, but old Smitty wanted one. People were passing out, puking, you name it. It was horrible. Still haven't recovered from that one.
Although not too much, and only when it's appropriate for the story.
Ho-ho! I just saw this hellacious explosion! What the hell was that?
I blew up the gas station.
What? Just cause you can't drive, man, doesn't mean no one else wants to. We could've used that gas.
Well, like you wouldn't have done the same thing.
Touche, Capitan.
Cole telling people in the train to stay calm is funny because he's not used to being a hero.
Just stay calm in there.
Or if you're evil, he doesn't really care about being a hero and just wants to get it over with to move on with his goals. This is another great use of two-sided dialogue and a funny moment. Zeke is the main source of comedy, and when he disappears in the third act, you really feel Cole's loss of lighthearted friendship. A lot of Cole's humor is sarcastic remarks on how depressing his situation is.
Oh yeah, that's the smell I know and love.
It reflects his loss of hope and sort of his sanity as well. There's also some more dark humor with Kessler.
Experiment number 34J. Placing a male rat of average size into a lead box. The ray sphere is in a secondary chamber adjacent to test subject. I can hear the subject moving. Unbelievable! It's flying! Damn it! Shoot it! Shoot it!
Alright, our next comment comes from Neonex, who says, Shadow Power. That's right, everybody. We're gonna be doing my idea for the Shadow Power. It's been a long time that you guys have waited for this, but now I can finally reveal it. So here is how Shadow looks. On evil, it sort of like has a purple aura to it. On good, it has like this light sort of sunshine aura to it, even though that makes no sense because it's a shadow. Anyways, what you do with the Shadow Power is you can, Naviek Gaming says, I think Ghost should be a power. Alright everybody, here is the look for the Ghost power. On good, you're like a white ghost, and on bad, you're like a black evil ghost. No, I'm not trying to be racist, okay? It's just that black like usually symbolizes evil, white usually symbolizes good, alright? I'm not trying to be a racist. I love white and black people, but only white and black people. Okay, so what can you do with the Ghost power? Well, first off, you can turn invisible. I mean, that's really cool. We've never had a power in Infamous where you can turn invisible. And while you are invisible, enemies won't be able to see you. Also, you can just float around as a ghost. That's how you move when you have the Ghost power. And, check this out. While you're floating around as a ghost, you can go through solid objects. Just go straight through it. It's so cool. And to attack with the Ghost power, you can... What is this phone doing on my desk? I've never never had a phone here. I don't know where this came from.
May I speak to the...
Sorry, I'm making an infamous video right now. You'll have to call back later. Thank you, bye. Anyways, to attack with the ghost power, you can say boo.